Did I change the name of this podcast again? Yes, I did. Welcome back to Playing Pretend with me, Catherine Rossler. So I'm getting into using my camera now to record while I podcast. I'm still using my Zoom PodTrack recorder, and I'm using my Sony Alpha 6000 to record video. I wasn't going to record video at first. No, I was at first, and then I wasn't, and I started just like recording podcasts without it. But I now see how these can like double as YouTube videos. And don't get me started on like what is the difference between like like a YouTube video and a podcast video. Like honestly, there's a lot of overlap because sometimes like you could literally have the videos that you have on YouTube as a podcast video, but also obviously some you can't, especially when you need more visuals, but this will serve as both. This is episode number 5. I'm excited to get to this is such a perfect transition. So I'm excited to get to episode number 22. I've decided that I'm gonna have 22 episodes in the first season. First, because 22, I love the number 2. It's always been my favorite number. And also, I think 22 is like the number that like most podcasters don't get to or like don't surpass. So I'm like, if I can do that, I can do anything. But today I wanted to talk about angel numbers, specifically 222, the reticular activating system in your brain, and also then tying that into the idea that I've had of calling myself an artist. I think we'll see if that ties in. Anyways, angel numbers. So angel numbers, they're known generally. I'm sure there's a better definition than this, but they are numbers like sequences, usually like 111, 222. You know, everybody's all about 1111. For me, I see 222 everywhere. Yesterday, I got coffee with a friend and I ordered my coffee, like it was from Starbucks. So on the cup, it said 222. We had been having like a conversation before that. Like we were talking about with the barista about water bottles and whatever. But like, what are the chances? Sometimes it comes to me and I'm like, I get it. Like there's other explanations for this. And like, maybe that is just what my brain's looking for. But like when things like happen like that, I'm like, girl, you know, this means something. And that also brings me to, well, okay, first let's talk about what the reticular activating system is. So this is a part of your brain, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but this is what I've learned from neuroscience and a neuroscientist. I'm on the brain. The reticular activating system is the part of our brains that is like looking for what it tells us to. We get so much stimulus that comes into our brains and in our bodies, and we can't process it all, obviously. So that's kind of like the filtering system for our brain when it's like, oh, okay, like I'm supposed to look for this, you know? So that's when, for example, you see like you just break up with an ex and then you hear that person's name all the time. That especially because the name is salient. So salient is like you have a deeper emotional connection to it. So like your neurons, your neural pathways and stuff are more heightened by that stimulus, and so therefore your brain's probably gonna be like, oh my god, John, I heard John, you hear the name John, oh my god, John. Has nothing to do with your ex, but your brain associates that name with that emotion, and then you become more hyper aware of it because you've just broken up and now it's something that's gaining your attention. So that's like another example where you might see this in action. Same thing, I feel like the really popular example of this is like you see, like you want a red Jeep, so you see a red Jeep everywhere. You want a particular car and you see that red car everywhere, or that car anywhere. And yeah, for me it's 222. I see it all the time. Sometimes I do see other numbers, but like 2, it really is it's always been my favorite number. When I was in grade 1, I was like, we would have our numbers and our numbers were based, I think it was 22. Anyways, I could have been 21. Could be lying, but in my memory, and we all know memories are not exact, they're not perfect, but we were numbered like on the list, and I might have been number 21. Anyways, I like number 22. I could have been 22. Maybe I was 21. Who knows? Maybe one time I was 22 and another time I was 21. I think that's it. Like sometimes it would switch depending on the year. Anyways, yeah, I've always really liked the number 2. I also like the number 3. Anyways, so these angel numbers are what, like, each has particular meaning. Also, I think they generally also give the meaning that you want to give them. For me, number 2 is like, you're always on the right track. Things are going well. Like, keep doing this. Like, it's a good sign. Like, I just take it as a good sign. Whatever aligns in my life that has that number is like a really good sign to me. It's a really good sign to me. That's what I was trying to say there. Yikes. Okay, so when I look up 222, what does it mean? Balance, collaboration, love, and harmony. It's like you are aligned with everything. Trust that everything is working out exactly how it's supposed to. I totally believe that. I feel like it is always just telling me that I'm on the right path. But I think it's interesting where, like, I definitely live in this world where I do believe in both science and spirituality. I think that, and I might have talked about this before, but my understanding of pantheism, and I don't, not super deep into it, but I really like the understanding of what it is basically that science and spirituality are the same thing. They're just like different ways that people explain them. And I really do think that as humans, we are storytellers, we are meaning makers, and a lot of religion and like these mythical tales and things were what were created at the time to explain like what was going on. And I think in modern day, we have, especially in Western society, we've been stripped a lot of this like higher spiritual meaning that we have with things, and we're really rooted in things with things that are in science. And I totally believe, like, I really, really do believe that we need science, and it has given us so much, and I'm so grateful to have it. But I also like to tie it in with like the spiritual side of life and understanding, because also you can make the criticisms of science that, you know, it doesn't explain everything. There are still a lot of gaps in understanding, and new research always comes out which changes the meanings and like of the other findings that have happened. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I really do think that's interesting at how with more research and more diversity and inclusion in that research, it like changes and morphs things over time. And on the other hand, you know, you can criticize spirituality and say that it is, you know, it's not based in logic, it's not based in fact. Like, what is the proof, right? You can really criticize and go down to like, what is the proof of this besides somebody's own personal beliefs or like intuition and feeling? And then I guess on the flip side of that is like, yeah, science does have so many findings, and spirituality or like religion, I think it speaks to something so much deeper, and it speaks to kind of like our evolution as human beings. One thing that I came across probably first when I was getting sober and I would attend AA was that it was based in Christianity, the original groups, but they evolved to just kind of make it more broad because there were so many people that needed this support and this community. And in it, I think the second line is like, let me look it up. So number 2, oh my God, how aligned, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And often talking about, people really get fixated on a power greater than ourselves, especially in like a lot of the literature in AA specifically. They talk about God, and God can be, some people refer to it as like good orderly direction. And once I was talking to somebody and they were sharing, they're like, you can, like, anything can be a higher power. Like the ocean can be a higher power, the wind can be a higher power. The understanding that we are not control of like gravity can be our higher power. And I think that's the connection that I see between science and spirituality, is that having this understanding of science, but also that like there's so much that's outside of our control. And maybe you can explain some of those things with science, But I do think like that's kind of where this like maybe gateway, this portal exists, where it's like, oh, okay, but like just even the fact of that belief in like even like belief in science to me feel like can still be a bit spiritual in that sense, because you're putting like you recognize that there's a power greater than you outside yourself. And I think having that distinction of like this power greater than you is where you start to tap into some of the things that like spirituality talks about. And I also think it exists like in things that are talked about in religion and spirituality. They often overlap with like other areas, like if you want to like go into the philosophy or like self-development or like personal growth, and they definitely interweave. And sometimes I think it's just people using different definitions for the similar things. Another thing that it brings to mind is like you're not going to go into a baseball field and like watch a baseball game and be like, that's not how you firefight, or like that's not how you like hip hop dance. Like you can't take the rules of one thing and apply it to something else, because it's kind of just ridiculous. Like obviously baseball players aren't hip hop dancers, they're playing baseball. So why would you apply those like the rules of anything else to that sport, if that makes sense? And I think that's probably also why this argument between science and spirituality or religion, God, is, but really like they're just two different things, and maybe they can talk about the same things, but like they're coming from different approaches and understanding. So I think they honestly complement really, really well together. And I believe in both. And that also is a big, I guess, factor of life, is that we get to choose what we believe in. And whatever you believe is what you believe. Okay, now I'm seeing what I made my notes on before. Whatever you believe is what you believe. So if you believe that you're destined to be lonely, or you're destined to be single, or you're destined to be sad and depressed, or you're destined to be an alcoholic, you will probably make those things true. Your reticular activating system, your brain likes to confirm things for you. It wants it to be easy. So your brain, the RAS, is going to be like, okay, like how do I confirm this belief that I've told myself? And it will look for those things. So when this was about 2017, I had always, like as a kid, like one of my dreams was like I really wanted to be a visual artist. My parents had their art around our house, and we would always we'd go to art museums and things, and I was always like, why aren't you guys artists? Like, why aren't you making art all the time? Like, that's the coolest job ever. Like, why don't you do it? And I didn't understand until I got older, and I was like, oh, I get it. Being an artist is intertwined with money, and it's also intertwined with like self-confidence and like understanding. And I was unable to call myself an artist until 2017. Even after I had gone to like taken art classes, I went to like in my undergrad, at first it was studio art, and then I made studio art my minor. So I had taken art classes. I had made a bunch of art, but I wasn't able to call myself it. And then I met a friend when I worked at Whole Foods, and shout out Gratian, he said to me, he's like, yeah, just call yourself one. Just call yourself an artist. And I was like, oh, like, I guess you're right. Like, I needed somebody to tell me that. And so I just started calling myself an artist. I'd be like, I'm an artist. Did I believe it at first? No, I didn't. Because it was a new belief that I was like implanting into my brain. My brain wasn't ready for it. It was rejecting it because my beliefs for so long have been that I wasn't one, that I wasn't good enough yet, that I couldn't call myself that. But once I had this understanding of like, oh, I can just call myself it. And then over time, like now I can stand in conviction and say to you, like, I'm an artist. And I don't feel that imposter syndrome. I don't feel like I'm lying to you because I genuinely believe it. And so imposter syndrome is basically like you being outside of your comfort zone. Your brain isn't used to this like new environment or new understanding or new belief because you've never lived in it before. And we definitely, like our greatest challenges and our greatest things to overcome usually just like reside in our own minds, because we have to be the ones to understand and be like, oh, okay, like I used to believe this about myself, or I believed this about this type of person. For example, to be an artist or call yourself an artist, I think I used to have beliefs around money, like, oh, I have to be making money and I have to be a full-time doing this to call myself an artist, or I need to make art that looks like this person or looks really realistic, or I need to be in a gallery show and blah, 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 blah. But that's not true. And that was just lies or beliefs that I was telling myself. I was believing that in order to be an artist, I had to meet all this criteria. And sure, in a lot of professions, that is true. In order to be a doctor, you do have to go to school and meet all the criteria. But even through that, like, it's a process. Like, you probably go in to be like, I want to be a doctor, start taking all the courses and classes, and then like you step into that new identity. And with like something like an artist, something in the arts where it's a bit more abstract, especially in the arts, it's something where I think standing in conviction of it, at least for me, that was really helpful in my path in being an artist and creative and being able to step into it, because I had the understanding that, okay, like I am this, so I get to, like, I am an artist, so I can make art often, or I can tell people that I'm an artist, or I can share my art, I can enter into art competitions, I can have my own gallery show, I can post about my art online and not feel like it conflicts with my personal identity. And I mean, that is a whole nother story of art and the separation from self, because it is so deeply intertwined. And yeah, but really stepping into that conviction of I am an artist really helped me along my path and discovering like who I am in a deeper way and a deeper level. It's also been really grounding for me recently, with healing from long COVID and with trying to figure out what I'm doing next with my art and with my healing, and using that understanding of, oh, I've done this before. Like, I've changed my belief about me, and now it's not even something I think about. I don't question anymore. None of those imposter syndrome beliefs, none of those like limiting beliefs come up for me in the same way. Shouldn't say they don't come up. I still have other beliefs around being an artist and what I think is limiting me. However, I don't ever think like, oh, I'm not an artist. Like, I don't think that. And I don't question when I share with people. I don't feel the same sort of a resistance and insecurity that I used to feel pre-2017. It's now 2025. And yeah, that was just really empowering for me. But I think what is fun linking it to like, angel numbers and the reticular activating system in our brain and neuroscience, this is how my brain is working recently. And another thing, like, I think somehow like it's almost, I'm seeing it reflected too in the media that I'm consuming, the books that I'm reading, and the courses that I'm taking. Not only am I seeing what I believe repeated back to me, but I also think like our beliefs about ourselves and the world are what we are going to seek out. And then that kind of directs us more into our own deeper understanding of ourselves. That's, where we're going to do more research. I'm going to pick up a book about neuroscience, and of course, that is going to connect more dots for me. And over time, more and more of these dots connect, which is just so much fun. Just reminds me of how recently I've been saying to myself, I love reading, because I've been taking time off of social media, and I'm really trying to disconnect that way. And by stepping into this new identity shifting, I'm able to like think to myself. So something happened to the video and it stopped recording. But the audio is still there, which is great. So the rest of this will either be you just listening to the audio, or you listening to the audio while I sit here and make funny faces at you. myself, oh wow, like I love reading. Like instead of going on social media, I'm going to pick up a book because I want to learn more and I want to train my brain and I want to make all these new connections. And yeah, I think it's just really cool to step into the understanding that we are the creators of our own life, and to know things like having the reticular activating system and really know that that's part of your brain is so empowering. To be like, oh, okay, how do I use this to my advantage? How do I use these tools and these understandings about my brain, which is rooted in science, to apply to my other interests about creativity and art and like being an artist and spirituality, and how does this all link? Because like I said, at the end of the day, like you believe what you believe. So, but you also get to choose what you want to believe. And so you can morph and change your world like the way you want to. And I think that's just really fun and really exciting. So my goal for these episodes, I'm like having fun with the number 22. So I want to try and keep them around, like, let's see, 22 minutes. Will this continue? I don't know, because remember, this is all an experiment. All of life is an experiment, and especially this podcast, I'm having fun with it. So thank you for listening. Please follow me on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow the pod on Instagram. And yeah, if you liked what you heard, please shoot me a message. And thank you so much for listening. I'm so grateful. I love you. Have a lovely, lovely day, evening, life. Bye-bye.